it's an honor to have here Tia, who is a self-advocate in the intellectual and developmental disability realm. She's a global advocate. Tia Nelis, she has spoken within the United Nations environment many times, and she's worked on deinstitutionalization, and she's here together with Ailash Hardy, who is a program manager at Inclusion International. And I'm so happy to learn today about the Listen, Include, Respect guidelines and share that with our global community as a best practice that really evolved out of listening to the people who have lived experiences with intellectual and developmental disability and what are their needs, what do they need, so they can be included within our communities and within our organizations. Thank you so much, Tia. The floor is yours.
Today we are here to talk to you about Listen, Include, Respect. Listen, Include, Respect is a set of guidelines and tools for all types of organizations created by the networks of Inclusion International and Down Syndrome International. The guidelines help organizations of all types to be more inclusive of people with intellectual disabilities so that everyone can get information the way that we understand, can share our ideas and experiences and knowledge alongside everyone else, are parts of the process and can make decisions at every level, are treated as equal part of the team. For example, as staff members, as part of boards and committees and projects and users of services.
So why do we need the guidelines? So Inclusion International and Down Syndrome International, our members around the world have told us that people with intellectual disabilities are the most excluded groups of people in the community, amongst the most excluded groups of people in the community. And we know that organizations have a responsibility to be accessible and inclusive of everyone, and make sure that people with intellectual disabilities have the same opportunity to be included in organizations' work and decision-making as anyone else, and have their human right to meaningful participation respected. And we feel like this is especially important when organizations are service providers or working on human rights of people with disabilities, because we think our organizations need to really role model the inclusion we want to see in the community. So although there are many self-advocates with the skills and experience to contribute and be part of work, we know that organizations need tools and need support to understand how to help people with intellectual disabilities to fully take part and be included. So we made the guidelines to help organizations understand how to do that, and understand that including people with intellectual disabilities isn't just a short-term piece of work. It's not just about making easy read or having an advisory committee. It's about changing the way that organizations do things and changing the way that organizations think, and having a real top to bottom approach.
Creating the guidelines. Our networks created the guidelines through a long process of consultations and testing with our members. We launched the guidelines in 2022 at the Conference of State Parties on the CRPD. Who contributed? 350 organizations, 100 countries, more than 1,500 people, and 60 inclusive consultations. Who contributed part 2? As you could see in the turquoise colored part of consultations to help create the guidelines. So all the places that are in turquoise have helped us create the guidelines for Listen, Include, Respect.
As Tia said, we held around 60 inclusive consultations with our members, and one of the things that we asked them during those consultations was to understand the barriers to inclusion. So what are the barriers that organizations are putting in the way of making sure that people with intellectual disabilities can really participate? And we heard that a lack of awareness and understanding was kind of the top barrier. So people didn't understand about intellectual disabilities. They didn't understand how to support people well. Inaccessible information and communication was another big barrier. Not providing reasonable accommodations, reasonable adjustments so that people can take part, and not really understanding what those might be, what they might be able to offer. We had that poor support was a big barrier. That lack of time, so people with intellectual disabilities may need a little bit more time to take part and to understand, and organisations rarely allow for that. People with intellectual disabilities are often excluded from decision making, so people are very rarely on boards or in leadership positions, and so are excluded from decision making across organisations. And there's very few budgets or resources allocated to support inclusion.
So these are the principles, are the main ideas we heard from our network, which an inclusive organization follows. The principles underpin all the guidelines. Each checklist tells organizations how to make sure these are followed, like believing in inclusion, self-advocate leadership, understanding and awareness, accessible communication, reasonable accommodations, valuing the process of working together, using the CRPD as our guide, and understanding that inclusion is a journey. So we feel that it's very important that we would meet the organization where they're at, but knowing that that it is a journey in order to do inclusion in the fully, but we also know that we meet them where they're at and that it could take time, and then we hope that they continue, as long as they continue trying to make process including people with intellectual disabilities in their organization.
So all of the guidelines are available on the website listenincluderespect.com, and the website is available in English and Spanish at the moment, and in the next couple of months it will be available in Arabic and in Portuguese. There's also a Malaysian version and a Chinese version in the works. And you can see, if you click on the how-to guides, all of the different areas are covered. So you can't scroll down on this, but we have inclusive organisations, meetings, consultations, projects, and Tia will share a few more of those in a second. And then you click through into the guides, and there's different sections. So if we're talking about inclusive meetings, these are the different checklists on how to run meetings. So online meetings, conferences, focus groups, that sort of thing. And then clicking through into one of those, you'll see just an easy to follow checklist, which you can have a look at as you're planning a meeting, for example. And we also share resources from our members, which may be useful.
So part of the guidelines is how to run inclusive projects. Other parts are how to support inclusive boards and decision making. Parts of the guidelines is inclusive employment and providing good support so self-advocates can fully participate.
So I think we're coming up to our time, but we're happy to answer any questions that you might have in the chat. But before we finish up, we just wanted to share about the Listen, Include, Respect consultancy services. So we have a lot of self-advocates contributed to the guidelines, and we have a lot of self-advocates who now are interested in continuing that work and supporting organisations to get better at including people with intellectual disabilities. So that might be giving advice and support on setting up an inclusive conference, or giving advice and support on creating accessible materials, reviewing policies, being part of project planning, any sort of area that is covered by the guidelines. We have self-advocates who would be available to support and give advice and share their lived experience. So that's Tia and I's email addresses and the website again, and I will put it in the chat as well. Anything you'd like to end on, Tia?
Thank you for listening to our project, and we hope you check out our website and contact us if you're wanting to hear more or be a part of Listen, Include, Respect. Thank you for inviting us to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, Tia and Eilish. This is really a very, very good example of how to create a process that really takes advantage of the expertise of lived experiences. I remember a few years ago, our self-advocates contributed to the focus groups, and we had YI people discussing on Zoom through the pandemic what is important and how could organizations and life be more inclusive for them. So these are great guidelines. I can only encourage anyone who wants to include and has people on their team and their organization, wants to be more inclusive, to really check out these guidelines. And I'm so glad for the opportunity to promote this. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And now we have Erica Andres. Erica has over 20 years of experience working in the health and human service field and has the added expertise of lived and self-directed life and directed her care for over 20 years. So she works with applied self-direction together with Catherine Murray, who is an expert in regulatory compliance and Medicaid-funded self-direction programs. And she focused on labor and workforce issues. And Kate is a nationally recognized expert on the Department of Labor's home care final rule that revised the Fair Labor Standards Act and consulted with the state Medicaid agencies and managed care organizations. So applied self-direction really works a lot with government entities and making sure that we can bridge that gap. How can government actually implement these best practices so that we work well together with the field? So I'm very glad to have you here for presentation, and the stage is yours.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. We're so happy to be here, and we are here to talk about what self-direction is and how it impacts people's lives. A few quotes that we really thought helped show how great self-direction is are listed here, but they say more control of what services look like and how they're used. One of the people stated that they had an individual who's gone for over a year without services from an agency due to the agency not being able to find staff, but now he's fully staffed thanks to self-direction. A couple more, an individual was uncomfortable with agency-provided workers due to the high turnover rate and inability to connect with them. She now receives services from a family member that is consistent and she is comfortable with. She has no unmet needs and is no longer at risk of losing her apartment. This is just such a difference that self-direction is making. So I always think that to really understand what self-direction is, you need a story of someone self-directing to see what the gigantic impact is on someone's life. So we have a lot of examples from our work, but since I knew I was speaking on such an esteemed panel in front of such an important group that I might get nervous, and I certainly didn't want to screw up, I wanted to stick with what I knew. So I know myself pretty well, and I figured I really couldn't screw that up. So you might notice that the picture on the slide looks a lot like the picture on my screen. So here's what my story is. You'll learn a little bit more in the next few slides, but I used to work with a traditional provider, in this case, an home care agency. I've been self-directing for several years. I was going to give you an exact number, but that made me feel old. So let's just say at this point, I have a lot of experience and I am an expert. I've been able to use self-direction to move out of my parents' home and into my own apartment with my boyfriend, even though I have spinal muscular atrophy and I require total care with all of my needs. With self-direction, I'm really in the driver's seat and have complete choice and control. I now work for a applied self-direction and own my own business. I can spend my days doing work that is meaningful to me. Before self-direction, job choices were a little limited because I only had care at certain hours and certain times of the week and certain days. I get to spend time with the people I love doing things I love. So I get to go visit friends, go to plays, volunteer, go to concerts and festivals. I really don't like being at home and staying at home. So with self-direction, I can live my life on my terms, so I really never have to be at home if I don't want to. I hope my story helped you get a little bit of a basic understanding of what self-direction is, but here's a few more details. Self-direction, which is also called consumer direction, participant direction, or member direction, is a model of long-term care service delivery that helps people of all ages with all types of disabilities maintain their independence in their home and the community. The person decides how, when, and from whom their services and supports will be delivered. Self-direction always prioritizes the person's choice, control, and flexibility. So in self-direction, as I said, the participant has choice and control over what services to use, who to provide those services, how those services will be provided, and when those services will be provided. So again, to give you real-life examples to make it more understandable, with agency services, the agency set the schedule. I used a traditional service in college. So as a college student, I had to be in bed by 9 or 10 p.m., even on the weekends. So I obviously couldn't pull an all-nighter to study for a big test. And I was going to bed just as my friends were going out. But with self-directed services, I get to set my own schedule and I go to bed when I'm tired. Funny thing is, now I'm kind of old and I want to go to bed by 9 or 10 anyway. Also in self-directed services, there was no care after midnight. So I had to be home and in bed before midnight. Also, no overnight care meant that I really had to hope that nothing happened overnight because there was no one there to help provide care. Now I have care whenever I need it. I actually have 24-hour care 7 days a week. So even if there's an emergency in the middle of the night, I can have care. I also didn't meet my caregivers until they showed up that first day to take care of me. I had to train them as best I could in their 2-hour shift and then start over with someone new the next shift. I had 4 shifts a day, 7 days a week. So that could be a lot of people to train in 1 week. Now I recruit, interview, hire, manage, and train my own workers. I get people that I like and can train them how I want things done. The added bonus is that my mom is now on my payroll. And so I can now say, because I said so, as a reason as to why she has to do something. And she has to just do it without arguing. It's kind of payback for all the time she did that to me as a kid. In traditional services, I also ate meals on a schedule, went to the bathroom on a schedule, even showered on a schedule. And sometimes I had to choose between showering or eating or going to the bathroom because I didn't have enough time to do all of them. Now I eat when I'm hungry, I go to the bathroom when I need to, and I shower every day unless I choose otherwise. And I still get to eat and go to the bathroom. Imagine that. As I talked about, a few hallmarks of self-direction include choice of goods and services to purchase, the freedom to develop the workers' schedules, innovative use of community resources, honoring the dignity of risk. Obviously, we all know that we never want any participants to be in danger, but everything in life has risks. It also has flexibility in hiring who you like, creativity in what services to use, and most important, authentic choice and control in all aspects. Now, just to wrap up a few things, some benefits of self-direction include that it empowers participants. The skills that I've learned as a participant employer have carried on to help me build confidence in other aspects of my life. I own my own business and I work for Applied Self-Direction to be able to be here with you all today. There's a less unmet need and turnover because I can hire people who wouldn't usually work in self-direction. One of my caregivers is a third shift machinist in a factory. She is one of the most caring and wonderful people I know. She saw my ad. I really think she saw the part about how much I really like shopping, and she messaged me to work with me. But she probably wouldn't walk into a home care agency to try to get a job. There's less turnover because I form a bond with people, and people want to stay on as a backup, even if they have to move on with their lives. I joke that I have 3 doctors, a PhD prepared nurse, a couple of therapists, and a whole slew of other professionals on my roster. And we all know it isn't from the pay in home care. There's more choice and control on how the services are delivered. I can hire workers I feel comfortable with and I like, and I can also hire friends and family and boss them around, like I said. I do really promise that I am a nice person if people do stay around to work for me. There is obviously, as we talked about, more flexibility. I can leave my house with self-directed services. With traditional services, I could only get care inside my home. And unfortunately, I am still disabled, no matter if I'm in my house or not. Other benefits of self-direction include that there's built-in supports. There's always somebody there to provide information and assistance, and there's always a financial services provider. Both of these people want to help you succeed. The participant can also train workers to do things how they would like. Self-direction has been found to be especially helpful in rural settings when agencies aren't around and jobs are more scarce because they can hire neighbors. Also, self-direction has a lower cost compared to traditional services because there's no company overhead. Unfortunately, with everything in life, the positives always come with challenges. So some challenges of self-direction include that I am in charge of all staffing. I recruit, hire, and manage all of my workers. And this includes having difficult conversations when things aren't going well. I've even had to do disciplinary actions and terminate my caregivers, which can be kind of intimidating. And it's also especially hard to find fill-in workers when someone calls in last minute. Luckily, I have a great team with lots of friends that will help me out. Other challenges that can include that participants are not trained to be employers. They sign up to be in a self-direction program, and all of a sudden they're the boss. Luckily, I have a degree in human resources, but this isn't common for participants. Participants are also not respected as the employer or the boss a lot of times. I find that if I'm disabled, there's this presumed incompetence that I can't do anything. Also, it's difficult to understand program documents, regulations, and responsibilities. Besides being in the Wisconsin Self-Directed Program, I also worked as a case manager for 8 years, and I can still tell you that I don't understand everything in the program. A really big challenge in self-direction can be that wage maximums are often very low to find quality workers. McDonald's pays more, offers more benefits, and is less demanding, even though I am delightful at all times, obviously. I have to trust people I barely know with personal cares and information. I have to give complete strangers full access to my home. So some common misconceptions of self-direction include that there's lots of fraud, that it's only for those with lots of natural supports or friends and family that will help. There's only a plan B. It should only be used when it's a plan B and other services aren't successful. It is only for high-functioning individuals or not for people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. But in reality, self-direction is for everyone with the right supports. It increases choice and control. It reduces unmet needs, and there's no more fraud than in traditional services. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erica. This was very, very powerful. Thank you so much for participating on the panel. It's very, very moving, and everybody can see the expertise that comes with lived experiences that only someone who actually has the experience of doing it, and you're very fortunate to be so skilled to manage all of this. And it was a beautiful presentation also from the perspective of this is where best practice is moving, and more governments are buying in and trying to provide structures and funding structures to make this possible, and service providers need to also adjust to this new environment. And thank you also for outlining the challenges that it has in regards to managing all of that, and that might be also a food for thought for service organizations to see how can we be of support for people who are in self-direction. But it's very, very clear that this is a very important development that is helpful for people with disabilities, but all also could be very helpful for the elderly, making sure that unpaid family supports can actually be more valued and compensated. So it's a wonderful and very, very important practice that we have to keep in mind and educate ourselves about. So thank you so much for being part of this. And next, I want to introduce Beth Keaton. Beth is one of the nation's leading experts on integrated community employment for people with disabilities. Her work has transformed systems and supported countless people in launching rewarding careers and building lives with greater autonomy and economic freedom. If you can hear the sirens, you know I'm really here. So welcome, Beth, and thank you so much. Employment is such an important topic for marginalized groups to be included and valued within their community. So thank you so much for joining and contributing to this aspect of life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here and to see the amazing array of people who are joining us from around the world. So I could talk for days, and I do talk for days sometimes on customized employment, but I'm going to focus today less on the systemic element and more just trying to give an overview of what customized employment itself is and what that process looks like. I'm Beth Keaton. I'm the Executive Director of Griffin Hammis Associates, and we work both extensively throughout the United States and then some work internationally in places like Singapore, Spain, Canada, and Australia to try to help people build better foundations for providing really high quality customized employment services. And the target with this always is to ultimately help people to create employment opportunities that really promote and enhance full inclusion and access, and to really help people with disabilities build more empowered and freer lives. And that includes economically, obviously, which is really influenced by employment, but otherwise, right? So to just really be in charge of their own lives and have their own financial freedom. Customized employment itself emerged in response to the chronically low employment rates that we see for people, particularly people with the significant impact of disability. And the sad reality is that this has been true for many, many years, and it cuts across demographic lines. So the chronically low employment rates are basically the same, regardless of the person's age, gender, race, ethnicity, social economic status, urban or rural location, their education, their disability label, right? And so what we've known for many years now is that the processes that we're using, while well-intended and well-designed, are just not working effectively for the people who need the most support. Customized employment stems from this idea that to really get to meaningful employment in the community, we have to build it around the person from the start. And what that means is that we are often targeting creating employment. So creating employment opportunities that weren't previously there, that don't currently exist. And this is really different than the more traditional approaches where people are competing for positions. So they're competing for open jobs or existing positions. And historically, this has been really challenging for people with more significant disabilities, because oftentimes they'll have much stronger histories of segregation. They've had much more limited opportunities. A lot of times they've been the victims of very, very low expectations. And all in combined, this means they just don't have the same background and the same experiences as other candidates. And this is not about them, it's about the system and the lives and the opportunities that they've not had. But historically, employment services started by really trying to help make people appear more competitive, right? So we were competing for open positions and trying to help people look more competitive, but we weren't getting very far. And so customized employment came along and said, let's just scrap the competitive employment element altogether. Let's not compete for existing jobs. So instead, we're going to work to create opportunities within businesses or within the communities that both fit that person with a disability and that benefit the business or the community, or both, in the cases when we do it really, really well. There are three main phases to customized employment, and I'm not going to get into the weeds of each of these, but I'll talk a little bit about what it looks like. The first is discovery. The second is customized job development. And then the third is the support phase, where we work with the person and the business to get all the pieces in place once the job has been found. And each of the phases we say they're sequential and they're cumulative. So you start with discovery. The information you gather during discovery gives you the foundation then to move into customized job development. And all the information that you're gathering when you're out there working with community businesses or communities then gives you the information that you need to really support the job once the job is ultimately found. I'm going to talk a little bit about the first phase discovery, because that is really the heart of customized employment, and it's the piece that sets everything else up. And since our goal fundamentally is to create jobs that really fit the person, right? We're starting with this idea that we're going to build employment around a person. The first phase then, logically, discovery, starts with learning about the person. And the idea here is that the best way to learn about someone, which is who they are, what they care about, who's important to them, what they do well, not surprisingly, is not to evaluate or assess them. That's not going to give us the information that we need. But rather, the best way to get that information is to spend time with them in their lives. So we can best learn their skills, their learning styles, their support needs, if we actually spend time with them, watch them do the things that they do well and enjoy, and then we are talking to the people who really know them well and care about them. The target is always to be connecting with them in their home and on their home turf, so they always have what we would call that home field advantage, right? So we're meeting them in environments where they feel comfortable, where they're the happiest, where they're at their best, which is the exact kind of environment that we want to be able to replicate when we get into jobs, right? If we know where they thrive, then we know what it is that we're looking for. We know the kind of environment that's going to bring out their best. And from the get-go, during this discovery, spending time with them, doing the things that they do well, learning about them by being a part of their lives alongside them, one of our targets is to build social capital and connections. So even during this very first phase, when we're discovering who they are still, we're also trying to connect with other people in the community. And as we're learning about them, then we're trying to create opportunities within the community where they can try some new things related to what we're learning about, what they care about, and what they do well. So if someone we discover is a fabulous gardener at home, then we might connect with a local florist so they can try their hand at flower arranging, or we might connect with a local organic farmer so we can learn more about what they do there and give the person a chance to try something new, with the idea that all of us are better when we're connected, and that knowing more people is a benefit to all of us, building that social capital. So the social capital that we start to build around who people are, what they do well, and what they care about in the early phase then begins to help direct where we go next in a different way. So we're not doing this in isolation, but we're doing this as a part of the community. During discovery, what we're really trying to learn about ultimately is people's ideal conditions of employment. So what tasks, what environmental conditions, what work culture do they need to be successful? And then ultimately we'll crystallize all of the information that we've learned into 3 vocational themes. Once we get there, so once we get this ideal conditions and we know what their vocational themes are, then we transition to customized job development. And again, customized job development is different than more traditional job development practices, because we're not going out there looking to find out who's hiring, right? But instead, we're just going to make a direct connection with any community member or any community business that aligns with the person's vocational themes. And our target here, again, is not to say, are you hiring? But it's just to learn about the business and then to allow the employment seeker, right, the person, to meet these other people who share their interests and their skills and their passions and learn about their companies and the jobs that they do, to see if there might be some possibilities, if there may be some needs that that business has that aligns with what the employment seeker does and does well. So they really give the people the opportunity to connect. And when a person who is looking for work connects with, just has that sort of spontaneous connection with somebody who works in the field that's of interest to them, that's really where the magic starts. And it is very common then for employment possibilities to start to emerge from that. And then once we get through and we actually negotiate, figure out what a job could be and build it, then the final phase, we're working directly with the person and the company to just make sure they have whatever support they need as that job begins. And the person really works to become a part, not just of doing a job, but of the fabric of the company. One of the really powerful things I think about customized employment, and one of the things that gives it potentially a lot of validity or opportunity globally, is that it opens the door to different kinds of opportunities in communities of all sizes. So you can create a position within an existing company, right? So, and that's what we call wage employment. So the person gets a job, right? It's not an open position, but we've worked with the company to figure out, are there certain things that aren't happening in the company that would be beneficial to you if somebody could come in and do, and we create a job that way. But there are also two other really powerful outcomes that we actively pursue as a part of customized employment, one of which is called resource ownership, and the other is self-employment. And resource ownership is an opportunity to partner with existing small businesses and existing small businesses that would like to grow and expand, but they don't necessarily have the capital to do so. And so through resource ownership, the person, the employment seeker, will bring a resource or something into the company. And by doing that, they create a job. They create a new product line. They create a new service that brings in additional revenue. And that revenue then can be used to pay them, right? So somebody that we worked with years ago who lives in a small rural community got started because he partnered with a laundromat that had just opened. And the customers in the laundromat were constantly asking for cold drinks because laundromats are hot. But the laundromat owner didn't have the cash flow necessary to buy what he wanted, which was a slushy machine. So the employment seeker used some resources that they had, systems resources available, and purchased a slushy machine to put into the laundromat. And then he also started a rag cleaning business for local businesses. So businesses that were purchasing their linens from a big commercial company instead started using his service to wash the rags that they were using, and he did them by the bucket. And over time, he made enough money. His service was cheaper and easier with the linens, and money was coming in from the slushy machine to begin to purchase additional high capacity dryers for the laundromat. And then that enabled the laundromat owner to open a second location. So you really see this sort of going hand in hand with each other. And resource ownership is an enormously powerful opportunity, oftentimes for a relatively low cost, to get somebody in the door at a business as a partner, and then to help businesses expand in ways that benefit not just the business, but the community as a whole. Self-employment, I'll just tell this final story. So on the screen, you should see 3 pictures of someone named Poppin' Joe. And Poppin' Joe started a popcorn business over 20 years ago. At the time that he started, he was finishing high school. He was told, and his family was told, that he would never be able to work, that he needed to go to a segregated day program. I don't think they even thought he could do sheltered work, just sit in a day program. And his family knew that that was never going to be beneficial for Joe. So instead, they went through discovery. And they learned things like he really likes to be outside. He likes to be connected to other people. He's constantly moving. And he happened to really enjoy popping popcorn. So they did some research and they purchased one small kettle. And he started by selling popcorn on the weekends in a local store parking lot. And you flash forward 20 years later, he's still in business. He does festivals and fairs throughout the state of Iowa and now the state of Georgia. He has products in local stores. He sells online. He's known everywhere he goes by his tie-dye t-shirt, which is a signature shirt, his mohawk, though he may not have quite as much hair as he had all those years ago, and his huge smile. And he's really known for his popcorn too, which is extraordinary. And we say Joe is actually his own brand. People buy Poppin' Joes because of Joe. He's not missed a day of popping popcorn in over 20 years. This is somebody who was told he would never work. And he's made enough money to come off of his benefits here in the States. He's created his own life, his own network. He speaks publicly and teaches other people what he's done. And it's all been for the cost of one small kettle popper 2 decades ago. So I'll end with that story and just say thank you again so much for this opportunity to connect. I will put my contact information in the chat box and would love to contact or connect with anybody who's interested in discussing customized employment or employment options. And thank you again, Johanna, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Beth. This is wonderful. If I'm ever looking for a job, I would love to have customized employment. I think it should be the future of employment for everybody. And that sounds really wonderful. We did panels on employment before. And but what I really love about your presentation is that this is not like, okay, developing countries develop, so it's not system oriented necessarily. It can work in a very in a community-based environment, and you really emphasize community and connection a lot. And that is something so inherent to human beings and so appealing to everyone. So thank you so much. This is amazing work, and I hope you make some good connections here today. It's so valuable. Thank you so much. And next, I want to introduce Dr. Diane Kaufman. She's an internationally acclaimed arts and healing psychiatrist who also works for ASHA. That is an organization she will introduce today as a storyteller, and she's on the board of directors for this organization, and she has lived experiences as well. And she will introduce herself and her extraordinary work and Asha's extraordinary work. And I'm really, really happy to have you here today and to have such a rich panel of experts, professionals, and lived experiences all in one person. And so lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Joanna, and hello, everyone around the world. I'm so delighted to be with you this morning. I'm going to be sharing about ASHA International, Hope, Healing, and the Power of Story. My name is Diane Kaufman. I am a child psychiatrist, poet, and artist, ASHA storyteller, board member. I'm also the founder director of the Arts and Healing Resiliency Center at Mind Matters PC in Hillsboro, Oregon, as well as the founder director of the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention, which uses art to educate on suicide and helps those struggling with suicidal thoughts with the power of art to connect, express, and heal. First, I want to introduce you to really the amazing Gayatri Ramprasad. Gayatri is the president, founder director of ASHA International. ASHA is a Sanskrit word that means hope. And it also stands for a source of hope for all, for those touched by mental illness. Gayatri herself was born and raised in India, and then she came to Oregon. Gayatri has a mental illness, anxiety, panic, depression. She's had multiple hospitalizations, as well as having had suicide attempts. It's out of Gayatri's own lived experience that ASHA emerged. And I really encourage you to go to the ASHA International website, which is myasha.org, and listen to a TED Talk that she gave, because it is so inspiring. Please take my advice and listen to Gayatri. This is also her autobiography, Shadows in the Sun, Healing from Depression and Finding the Light Within. And ASHA is all about, let's talk about mental health. To have for ourselves and the community, to give the value, honor, and respect to people with lived experience, we're all human, and having a psychiatric illness is the same as having any other type of illness. And there ought not to be any stigma or silencing in talking about who we are and the challenges that we might be having. So ASHA is all about sharing personal mental health stories to connect with others, as I said before, break through silence, shame, and stigma, as well as to kindle the flame of hope and talk about ways that people are able to recover, whether that be, and most often it is, a combination perhaps of professional support, whether that's therapy, medication, as necessary, various types of programs, as well as family, friends, and community support. And I'm a tremendous advocate of creativity in helping people thrive in their lives. So Becca says, sharing my struggles and asking for help empowered me to recover from depression. And I'd underline that, to not feel inhibited or self-silenced, that we need to, if we're having some difficulty, we need to reach out for help and say, here I am, I need help, what is there available for me? Our purpose is to normalize conversations about mental health, and again, to inspire hope and well-being, one story at a time. So I would like to share now a video about how the movement started.
ASHA primarily taps into the power of human stories. We create social change through storytelling, we give hope through storytelling, we save lives through storytelling. Good morning. My name is Gayatri Ramprasad, and I'm the founder and president of ASHA International. Every 40 seconds, for example, there's a suicide in this world. Each morning when I wake up, it never skips my mind that in less than the time that it takes for me to take a deep breath, we have lost a person. Like many people, I grew up in a family where we did not talk about mental health, or certainly did not understand how integral mental health is for our overall health and well-being. I truly believe that stories, empowering every person living with a mental health condition to stand up and share their stories, will lead us to a world where there will not be any stigma or shame attached to mental health conditions. But the important fact is, many of us are not getting the help, and we need to change that. And that's exactly what our storytellers are dedicated in doing. They are willing to stand up and share their truth, their struggles, and their resilience, with one hope: that you, any one of you, if you ever see yourself struggling in these ways, that you will have the courage to get the help that you need. For the first 10 years of ASHA International's life, I traveled across US and India and Australia and South Africa, and I shared my story as far and as wide as I could. But there's only so much one person can do. So in 2017, we trained 20 storytellers here in Portland, Oregon, and the movement began. So with that, it's my distinct honor to introduce Natalie Robinson. She is a junior at Sunset High School, and she'll share her story.
I'm not Natalie Robinson. I'm Jackson Buell. And I'm a senior over at Glencoe High School.
Jackson's story has definitely a unique power. There are not very many young men on our storytellers team, or men of any age, very few men on our team that are willing to share their story. And it really, really highlights the fact that it's so much harder for men to talk about their mental health than it is for women.
Half of the world's population is males, and if they've all been taught that mental health doesn't exist, A, because it doesn't exist in general, and B, because we can't talk about it so we can be strong, it means that we have two barriers to break through for men before these conversations become normalized.
When I watch Jackson present and the way young men at high schools respond to his story, it cracks me up. They were just high-fiving, fist bumping each other, going, finally, there was a bro moment.
Asha's helped my life because through sharing these stories at schools like this, it's helped me heal and come to terms with my own story.
Asha literally means hope in Sanskrit, one of the world's most ancient languages that originated in my home country of India. And in English, it's an acronym for a source of hope for all. And that's exactly what we do. We give hope.
So every time we share our mental health story, as you could see just from listening to that, we reduce stigma and shame surrounding mental health conditions. We create the safe environment where people can share their struggles and seek help, as well as share their triumphs. And we communicate and create communities of hope and empathy and inclusion. Part of Asha International is having My Story, My Superpower clubs at high schools and universities. And Asha International can help fund clubs and mentor the young people. And we welcome your communication with us. And here is an email that you can reach out to, and I can also put that in the chat later, ashley@myasha.org. And now I want to share with you how I came across Asha and our paths crossed. So a number of years ago, I decided to attend a local mental health gathering. It was at a local church, and it was in the community surrounding where I was working at that time, which was Mind Matters. And it was a teenage-focused mental health conference. I went to the church. I didn't know anyone there. And Gayatri whom I did not know, came up to me and was saying hello to me. And I was about to share with her some creative work I had done on mental health, when all of a sudden there was a tap on my shoulder. And I looked up, and one of the organizers of the conference told me that one of the panelists had not come, that there was an emergency, and could I step in and be on the panel? So of course I said yes. Little did I know that Asha had organized that panel. So there I am, the fourth person seated in a row, and I'm listening to two teenagers tell their mental health stories, and then an adult who herself had a mental health story, plus she was talking about her daughter's mental health story, and then it was my turn to speak. And I decided at that moment that the cosmos was telling me that I should tell my mental health story, something that I had never said aloud in a public place before. So first I spoke about being a psychiatrist and suicidality and depression in young people and ways to help. And then I guess I took a big swallow and I began to share my lived experience, which was when I was in medical school, I had attempted suicide. I was medically hospitalized. Years later, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. I had experienced within my family, I would say, in part, a lack of support from my parents. I think they just didn't understand. And I think they felt ashamed, perhaps, about the problem that I was having. Years later, I would say 20 plus years later, my father apologized to me for something he had told me, probably when I was in the hospital, having just tried to kill myself. I had totally blanked out what my father had told me, but he apparently didn't, because he apologized to me. And he told me that he had told me, Diane, the next time you want to kill yourself, tell me so I can tell you the right way to do it. I can say that being on that panel and meeting Gayatri and listening to those young people and the parent on the panel, it really helped to transform my life. I became an ASHA storyteller and also a member of their board. And here I have transforming trauma into creative resilience helps me cope with bipolar disorder. As part of ASHA's efforts to educate, I have given grand rounds presentations at medical schools and am available to do it in other settings, online or in person. The title of one of my several presentations is "To Live or Die: Silence, Shame, and Stigma, Creating Compassion and Preventing Suicide." With ASHA, Mind Matters PC, and with funding from the regional Oregon Council of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, we received a grant which is focused on young people. So it will be teenagers through young adults. The idea is for young people in terms of inclusion to give us their thoughts on how to improve youth mental health, what needs to be done personally, family, community, systemically. This began during the time of COVID, so it really received no traction at all because of, the pandemic. I later retitled the project. It was originally called "If My Words Could Make a Difference." I renamed it to reinvigorate it, and I called it the Create Resilience Youth Mental Health Campaign. This is an acrostic poem that I had written. If you read down the first line, it's a letter of each line. It spells create resilience. If people might want to have this poster, I'd be free to share the digital of it. The idea for the grant is for young people through young adults to share either in writing or drawing or singing or a play or a story or an essay, what they think needs to be done to help youth mental health. And I would welcome participation around the world. So please be encouraged to reach out to me. And I also want to share that as part of the sharing one's voice, creativity can play a very, for some people and maybe for everyone, a big role. I founded the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention. With the poetry I've written, I've collaborated with singer-songwriters, and I'm very proud to say that I have 4 internationally award-winning songs, Best Song, Best Lyric, Most Inspirational. And these are songs that include at the end the hotline crisis number. In the United States, it's 988, but I would be happy to collaborate with other countries around the world if you might be interested in the 4 songs, that we could change the hotline number to your specific hotline number. So I welcome you to reach out to Asha. Here's the website again. And in the chat, I'll put additional contact information. And I want to thank YAI and Joanna for inviting me here today. And I hope to be able to communicate with some of you later. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Diane. And I love the intergenerational aspect of Asha, of really communicating between generations, and again, the strong expertise that comes from lived experience, and how powerful it can be in regards to dealing with internal shame, but also with societal stigma, to tell your stories, tell your own stories, hear stories, and really change how we see mental health. And that is a really cross-sector cutting issue, because mental health affects all of us at some point in our life, and none of us are isolated, and we all need support, and connecting with others who share this experience is so valuable in any hard experience that we have in our lives, including mental health. So thank you very much. And now I'm happy to introduce our internal panelist, Stefan Smith. He works with YAI, and he has an MSW from Adelphi University, and he is currently a licensed social worker in New York State, and he has also led our START initiative, which is YAI's very successful model in supporting families and people who are in crisis. So that is really a systematic approach, but what is very special about it, that it really works cross-system, cross-sector, bringing everybody together that is supporting a person, that is supporting a family, and making sure that supports are collaborative and effective in making sure people are supported well within their community. So Stefan, welcome, and you're going to turn on your video. That would be wonderful, and the stage is yours.
It's on. Can you see it? Hi, everyone. Just to make sure my PowerPoint is showing.
Yes, we can see you, and we can see the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joanna, for having me, and I'm really honored to be here and to see so many different people represented from around the world in the chat. So again, my name is Stefan Smith. Today, I'm going to talk about the START model. It is a national model here in the US. It's currently practiced in 14 other states as well as New York, and it stands for Systemic Therapeutic Assessment, Resources, and Treatment. So the START model was first developed by Dr. Beasley in 1988, and it was cited for best practice in the US Surgeon General report in 2002, and more recently presented at the National Academy for Science, Engineering, and Medicine in 2016. Studies spanning over 30 years, that's kind of how long it's been around, have found significant reduction in crisis services use, emergency department visits, and psychiatric hospitalizations for this particular population of IDD. The START program provides mental health assessment and 24-hour crisis response for START coordination and coaching, along with training, which I'll get into is very important, and system linkages, which is also a key component of the START model to address mental health needs for people with IDD. The START crisis prevention intervention services are patient-centered and engage service recipients with IDD and mental health and treatment, along with their support providers. As I sort of mentioned before, it has a reduction in emergency utilization, and more importantly, or equally as important, caregiver reports high service satisfaction. So the ultimate goal is to build capacity within the support system, and to have the support system see someone differently, and also increase quality of life measures. So some of our outcomes, how do we accomplish this? We really take a deep dive and conduct comprehensive biopsychosocial evaluations, which I will explain further on, to understand the person, the environment, understand their history, understand biomedical factors, that's causing someone to display a behavior. Because within the START model, we believe behaviors are a form of communication, and what is being communicated that we are missing as providers, and how can we build our capacity. We want to reduce emergency intervention services. Here in the US, the ERs, even coordinating with 911 and a police response to work with our population is not very effective. So we want to reduce that utilization of emergency services and build more planned community services for experts that can work with this population. Part of the START model is we provide a lot of psychoeducation to build capacity. Here in the US, primarily, you go to school, you leave school with an MSW, a nurse, a doctor, psychiatrist. Rarely in the school system do you have any training or any courses on IDD. So the START team, which is overseen by the University of New Hampshire, part of our goals is to provide education to the community on IDD Pacific and how it sort of correlates with mental health symptoms. PERMA is part of our philosophy. It's part of positive psychology, which I'll speak about later on, but it really looks at someone's character strengths. What is your strengths, and how can we utilize those strengths more to improve your quality of life, right? So we're not looking at, is this person having less outbursts? Is this person not having physical aggression? For START, we look at quality of life measures. Is this person living a better quality of life? And that's how we know we're being successful. We want to strengthen resilience. We hear a lot about resilience today. Resiliency is very important. Not only the resilience of the person, but the resilience of the support team. That's extremely important. We need to build a capacity and understand that someone is showing some very difficult signs of distress, not because they want to, but because of factors that's causing that, and we need to figure that out. But while we figure those things out, we have to understand that the team needs to have some more resilience to support the person. And ultimately, we want to foster, like we're here today, we want to foster local, regional, national learning communities. START is a learning program. We collect a lot of data. We look at data to learn. We look at new medications and how those are having side effects on behaviors. We look at new medical comorbidities and what's causing some of those displays and how people's behavioral profile. So it's a big learning community and a whole systemic consultation. The systemic role is very important. We want to bring everyone together and have the MD and the psychiatrist communicate quite often, because a lot of times MD will prescribe medication that may have a different sort of effect than what a psychiatrist may need. So getting people to speak and communicate and creating this cohesive unit is an also very effective part of the START model. We don't work directly with one person. We don't go to someone's home and meet with that person and their family alone. We meet with an entire support system. We have the entire support system involved in the treatment of care and goals and outcomes. So a big part of START is trauma-informed care. People that are referred to START are those that are currently in the IDD support system and are not doing well. And 99.9% of people that we support in START have experienced some form of trauma, be it, as you say, the small T's or big T's. But trauma is always at the forefront of all that we do, the trainings we provide, how we support staff, how we build capacity. And these are, I can do a whole training on trauma or speak on trauma by itself, but these are some of the key components we speak to families and providers about. How do you have the person feel safe? Safety is key. The person has to feel safe with you, around you, in the environment. So the words you use, the tone you use, your demeanor are all very important to help someone feel safe. And if someone is showing signs, and as you know, some of the basic reactions to trauma is this fight or flight. You see some of these signs, let's tap into trauma interventions. Building trust with providers, building trust among providers, building trust with families and providers, extremely important. Part of building trust is also being very transparent. People coming around the table, being open, honest, transparent, sharing goals, making sure we all have the same mutual goal, the peer support, mutual self-help. We want to build collaboration. We want to empower the client as well, empower everyone within that system. So I want to stress the importance of the person who we are supporting. The person referred to START is not only our client per se, is the entire support system. So how do we empower the family? for when the family goes to speak to the psychiatrist, they feel empowered to actually advocate and not just say yes because the doctor said so. How do we build a voice for the person that we support so they have a voice as well in the treatment plan? And how do you look at culture, right? What is the role of culture in some of what we are recognizing in historic and gender issues, all around the trauma-informed care approach? Some of our guiding principles, I kind of highlight I made some bubbles bigger. We look at the strength, I mentioned the biopsychosocial, I just touched on trauma. We look at wellness. So nothing speaks here about aggression. Is a person less aggressive? We want to focus on these guiding principles and have this be part of a natural intervention, natural talking points for the system, for the person, for everyone involved in that treatment of care. So look at wellness. What is a person doing every single day to feel well? Are they going for walks? Are they practicing spirituality? What are they doing every day to experience wellness? Biopsychosocial, which I will speak about in the next slide, the trauma-informed care, the cultural approach, and strengths-based and PERMA. So comprehensive evaluation, we stress a lot on, for START model specifically, because people who are referred to START, again, are people that have extreme complex histories due to multiple factors, due to not having the right diagnoses, and that causing medications and different medications or pharmacology change quite often and causes medical factors that causes more complex medical conditions. So we have to look at someone in a very comprehensive way. So the entire team, and the team gets support from psychiatrists and a clinical social worker. We look at the bio. We look at genetic factors. Are there genetic factors in the family that may cause some of the things we are seeing, right? The physical health. We look at, as I mentioned, the drug effects. So what drugs are the person taking? What are the side effects of these drugs? That's causing some of the factors. Another big component we try to focus on, can we reduce the pharmacology, right? People we support in START specifically, it's sort of harmful the amount of meds they're typically on. And those meds, people typically add more meds or increase the dosage. So one of our goals is over time to see if we can actually look at the pharmacology and have someone have more an effective streamlined profile. Psychological, was there trauma? How does the person feel about themselves? How are their social skills? How is the family environment and the social? Do they have friends? What do they do? Do they just go to their program, get on a bus, come back home, socialize within their IRA or with the family, or are they part of a community? And those are things that we look at in START. We go in, we meet a family where they're at, we look at the crisis, because we know there's a crisis program, so we try to address the crisis in the here and now. But as a case is with the program, and a typical case is with START 12 months to 18 months, these are factors we build upon. The pillars we build upon is now we need to look at social. What is the person doing every single day or within a week to build their social network? Because it's very important for us, it's very important for everyone that we support. And PERMA is part of positive psychology that we look at. It's a core concept of positive psychology is PERMA, which is a theory of well-being that attempts to discover what enables humans to flourish and puts people in flow. So this is sort of a template. Every home we support, we print this out, we have it in a home, we work with families and staff to think about, is the person we're supporting every single day experiencing 2 or 3 of these components? Positive emotions. What are they doing to feel joy? And we sort of tap into someone's character strengths. You know, someone enjoys seeing the sunrise. I mean, very simple things, seeing the sunrise, hearing birds chirp. What are things that they're doing every single day? Or eating foods that they enjoy. Every single day, if we can accomplish that, you will see a less likely of aggressive behavior, a less likely of emergency utilization, less likely of adding more medications. Engagement. How are they being positively engaged? Are they just, going to their program because that's what they're supposed to do? Or should they be in employment? Should they have more purpose in life? Or when they come back home, Are they just following the routine of the house? Or what are they doing to feel engaged in things that they enjoy doing? And if you, again, you start building on that, and more often you will see less likely of aggressive behavior, need for hospitalization, or to call 911 or add medications. Relationships. How are they building positive relationships? Not just relationships with staff, with peers, but relationships that they want to, be it intimate relationships, be it social relationships. If that's a focus for the team, we will see a less likely of all these other factors that cause people to be in crisis. And meaning, back to meaning and employment and purpose. How are they feeling accomplished? So this is something that we look at, and this is a philosophy of positive psychology, and it's interventions that we utilize, how we look at this every single day in someone's life. And if you can accomplish one or two of these things, you will see a less likely of all the other factors that may cause someone to be distressed. And the eco map is another guiding principle for the START model. We know sort of a factor for us is when someone is referred to START and you do an eco map, most times the eco map doesn't look, it would look like this. There will be less circles to the person is in the center who supported by START. And these are all the other supports, be it paid support, natural supports, community supports, right? So we also look at not only the circle they have and how many supports they have in different categories, but you look at the lines, right? And the lines determine, is it a strong support? Is it a strained support? Is it a one-sided support? Is it a dual support? And how can we increase these supports? One, if there's a gap in service, and not only increase the support, but how do we change the dynamics in the supports to be stronger, right? And how do we also ensure that everyone within the system is speaking and everyone in the system is working together with common goals, right? So how do we help with joining? Because a lot of times you will see, so again, you see the local churches here by itself. So how can we look at the local church? This is important for the person. How do we get that more involved in the system of care, right? So we want to look at the system of care, look at the eco map, the systemic work in action, and build upon it. So add more circles if we need to, if the person requires other additional support. If there's no social interaction and no friends, no intimate support, no social groups, how do we make referrals for that? And also not only make referrals, but support those supports to understand the person better, get them involved in the system of care, get them to be a cohesive unit, and that shows effectiveness. When we accomplish that and we change the lines and we change the dynamic of the system, we see better outcomes. And if you have someone is doing well, but a system of support is weak or a system of support is lacking, it won't be sustainable. So part of our goal is after we sort of look at the person through the biopsychosocial lens, we make recommendations, we're seeing someone is feeling better, doing better. The next step is looking at the person's eco map and how we can build upon that for sustainable outcomes, which is extremely important. We use a public health model for sort of a tertiary, what's called a tertiary care model. So the goal of this is sort of a very visual image of someone is referred to the program and they're typically in the tertiary intervention. During crisis, they're going to the hospital daily. The system is calling 911 daily. The person is not doing well. The person is not doing well mentally, physically, so emotionally, socially, and that's showing signs. And someone calls START, we come in, we look at it. There's not much support we can provide in that level. Someone is not doing well, we have to figure out why they're not doing well, and how can we address that in the here and now. It's not about PERMA, or about building the eco map, or about positive psychology. It's about what's happening now, and how can we fix that. The goal of the program is to move the person through the process of secondary and primary interventions. Secondary interventions is someone we have sort of figured out that maybe it's a medical factor. Someone may be constipated because of the medications they're on, and we are addressing that. And now we can look at PERMA, and we can look at building the eco map, and we can look at having more positive psychology measures within the home, within the system, bringing people together, doing trainings on trauma-informed care, how important trauma-informed care is, or doing trainings on common medical factors that we need to understand, because this person was referred to because of medical factors, an example. And then the primary intervention is when we look at the eco map, and there's more sustainability, and we're changing the odds. And this person now can live a life, they can have employment. They're no longer in that tertiary intervention of just fixing the here and now. We can look at how we can improve someone's life over time and increase their well-being. And part of why this is successful is really our clinical team that works together. So within the START team, we have access to a medical director who is a licensed psychiatrist and is also specialized in IDD and mental health, right? So it's very difficult to find someone that went to medical school, came as a psychiatrist, and really is a specialist in the IDD community. So the START team has access to one, and that really helps us to understand the people we support a lot better. It supports the team and the staff. There's a clinical director who's a licensed clinical social worker, again, an expert in IDD and mental health. Very helpful for us to understand cases and to provide trainings to build capacity. And part of the building capacity is the START medical director will conduct trainings to other licensed psychiatrists within New York City. And the other states that have STARTs, they do a similar sort of parallel of training. So a big part of the program is trainings to psychiatrists, social workers in the hospital, counselors. We also, the START Center for START Services is a national program that oversees all the national teams. So you have access to this national network of experts that supports the New York team and other states that have has a START team. And our START coordinators and our clinical leads are all master level clinicians in human services. So that really brings a level of expertise and professionalism to support this very complex group. So we know that people are referred to START have complex histories because of things I mentioned. So we have to have a team of experts that come together to work in a very cohesive unit with our own system as we look at all cases through that lens of how we can change someone's outcome and change someone's narrative. Part of what we leave families with, because we are a crisis program, so we have what's called a cross systems crisis prevention intervention plan. So there's a plan that we leave for families, but this plan is very different from other plans that may be out there because this plan focuses only on interventions that are not physical interventions. It's more, you use verbal prompts, you use environmental prompts, some examples of someone showing early signs, and that's a key. With this population, we try to find early signs. So you will typically hear someone said, this person goes from 0 to 100 very quickly. So they're destroying the house and nothing I can do. Our job is to go and do observations, and we try to find early signs. Is the person beginning to speak faster? Or is the person beginning to maybe get very fidgety? That's an early sign before they start, pacing and actually becoming more aggressive. So how do you intervene during early signs? And an example of this recently, there's a case, the family's from Jamaica. So we actually put on some Bob Marley music. So putting on music. So again, we use environmental cues to help the person feel safe and grounded back in the here and now. Or how we look at sensory noise cancellation headphones, or the lighting, or the colors in the house, how we look at those things to intervene in a very positive way that doesn't cause more trauma and makes things worse. And ultimately, if those things are not working, the last level to the crisis plan is you call the START team, and we provide telephonic support or in-person support through the crisis plan. And then we will meet as a team, the entire team meets again, reviews the crisis plan and sort of assess why wasn't it effective and why did the family have to call 911 when this person was trying to show signs of distress. And we revise the plan, we work the plan as a team. And one of our goals is to empower and build capacity within the family or the provider system where they can utilize this positive psychology plan that doesn't include any sort of restrictions or any sort of physical interventions. And they can use the plan without having to call any external support. And once that's done, that's sort of an indicator of this family or system has built capacity where they can use this positive plan that really outlines someone in a biopsychosocial lens, looks at the vulnerabilities, and provides positive psychology interventions to make them feel well and understand them differently. And as a reference, this is a Center for START Services. Again, it's a national program here in the States. This is the website and my contact information. And I will stop sharing if there's any questions that anyone may have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stefan. This is very insightful and a very good example of a very systematic approach of supports that really works in line with the person at the center, and the trauma-informed component is just something that is really emerging as trauma-informed work from many perspectives as a global best practice, as well as collaboration, cross-sector collaboration, and positive psychology, especially if we work with people vulnerable in trauma situations. And trauma really is becoming something that is not just that happens to a few people. It's a very common experience for all human beings, and I think it getting finally the attention that it deserves. And I'm so glad to hear the details of START. I heard a lot about this internally at YI. It's a very successful program. It kept expanding, and so I'm happy for the opportunity to learn more about it. And it's part of our field expertise that we have here at YI. So thank you so much for sharing. And now I want to share the last of our presentations. And I will share my screen in a minute. Just have to move over to the other. I have it. So as the final presentation for this panel, and then I'd be happy if people still can stick around. I know we're running a little bit later, but I'm really, really grateful for all the incredible participation that we had today, and the panelists and the people in the room. So stick with me. Supported decision making is really one of the emerging best practices in many fields. If it's in mental health, protecting people's legal capacity, or if it is in the intellectual and developmental disability realm, if it is in regards to people with Alzheimer and dementia. This is a concept that is very, very successful in protecting people's legal capacity, people's ability to make their own decisions in their lives and not have other people make decisions for them, but be supported in getting the support they need so they can make their own decisions. This is going to be a video contribution, and which gives the voice to the people who experience this type of support. And it shows three different families, the different people who are being supported. So we see a wide variety. And this film was done by Positive Exposure, which is also a New York-based organization that really tries to highlight and give a different perspective on health conditions and medical education. They have this video is part of a video library on FACES, Refining the Art of Medical Education. And so without further ado, I'm going to give the stage to this video presentation, which
I'm Oscar, I'm 26 years old, and I work at Shake Shack in Forest Hills, Queens, and I sell dog biscuits for Invictus Enterprises made by people with autism in Brooklyn, in Park Slope. I live in my own apartment in the Bronx. Supported decision making is the alternative to guardianship if anything ever happens to the family. Say if a plane crashed or if the family's got into a car accident, you need all the different supporters in the areas. Like me, I have a big support decision-making team. So I have Keisha, Robertson, Serena. Keisha and Serena, they help me with Medicaid. Nadine, Deborah, and Jennifer Pierce Jenny help me with advocacy. Linda does finances. Amanda Becker does employee. Andrew does transition. Jennifer Solis used to be psychologist, but she's in charge of finances. And Arnaldo's the therapist.
Hi everyone, my name is Katrina. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I'm 26 years old and I have a disability called cerebral palsy and I use a wheelchair for mobility. Supported decision making was something that I learned about a couple years ago. Oftentimes when people with disabilities turn 18, they're often told that they need to have guardianship. And for me, when I turned 18, my case manager would continue to come to my house to visit me or my mom or my family, and they would say, "Are you ready to apply for guardianship?" My mom knew that if she did guardianship for me, that she would have full control for me, and I wouldn't have much say. So when I found out about supported decision making, I knew that was something that I always wanted. And when I learned about how it works, I was really excited to bring a community together to support me. And I was really excited of how the process works.
This is my father, Ray Siegel, and he's going to also explain to you more about supported decision making.
Oscar brought us, my wife and I, and our family into supported decision making. I have two younger brothers who are in their 50s who are both blind. And I got to watch my parents be very concerned about them as they became adults and moved on and had a hard time transitioning. They've now transitioned and they're doing well and they're employed and they're married. But it's always this question of what's going to happen to them if they don't have family members around as a support. And this is a really unique kind of solution to that question because it's relying not just on one person, but kind of a group of people. What's great about the idea of supported decision making is that it's not putting all of the power over somebody into one person's hands. The idea is really very community-based.
In the beginning, you meet with a facilitator and you go through like a big board chart of areas of your life that you need support in. And I like that because I was able to see like the bigger picture clearly, and that they included every aspect of a person's life, even though you have a disability. They included family, friends, community, housing, medical, education. But I was able to identify someone to support me in each of those areas, and I made mine pretty unique because advocacy is important to me in community, so I was able to add that a part of my agreement and have a supporter or two in each of those areas.
Hi, I am Sirt Kivit. This is my dad, Christopher Kivit. And
How old are you?
I'm 18.
And you're tall.
Very tall. I get a lot of comments on my height. And some comments even saying, "Oh, you're way too tall. You look a lot older than 18." It has its upsides and downsides. And the upsides to it is you can reach a top shelf. And you don't have to worry about like tripping trying to get to a top shelf. Like this one here.
It's very useful to have someone tall in the house. There's no question about it.
Also, would like to add in, I am also autistic. Not many people can admit to that, but I have some issues in anxiety and also this, which is my tremor.
Yeah.
Supported decision making. So there could be a couple different people that help you with this. So to say if there was a medical issue my parents couldn't be there for, they're stuck in work, whatever issue, my therapist from my school would be able to help. People that are there for me and help me make decisions, some of which I don't know how to make.
For supported decision making, I think probably the biggest thing is the leadoff. We have to get more medical personnel, staff trained to ask the proper questions first, because you don't know necessarily, like we've had issues so long in the past, whether it's diagnoses for my son or anything else, you hear the he doesn't look autistic, or really like they're surprised, or even I'm sorry, like there's something wrong with it. But if we can get medical personnel to ask the question, are there any special needs that we need to keep into consideration? And is there a support staff or a support mechanism for this person, be it below 18 or above 18, to be able to get the answers that we need to properly treat anything that may happen?
My name is Nell Richardson, and I'm a family member as well, but I'm Katrina's godmother and part of her supportive decision team. So I've seen this process of decision making from the interim, and it was great working. I think we worked for about, 2 years, putting this program together. I have a disability myself because a couple years ago I had an accident and had a traumatic brain injury, which took me a couple years. And coupled with that, I've worked in the health industry for about 22 years, mental health and disability. So I quite understand her place. So most of the adults and children go into guardianship. And you see the challenges they face in that they don't have a say sometimes. So it's really important at this time to have a decision making, because it doesn't matter that you have a disability, you're still a person with your own goals and your own dreams. And it's really important then for you to be able to make your own decisions. So it's not about someone just coming into your life and say, here, sign here, sign here. You have a voice. The challenge was to get her parents on board, especially her mom. And I sat her down and I helped her to understand the importance. I said, look, you're aging now. Both you and your husband are getting older. And I know you're wonderful in taking care of Katrina. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they love her and it's their desire to take care of her. But the reality is that you're aging. And so you're going to need assistance. And then we brought her in to be a part of it so she can understand every process. And I think that's really important with persons who are going to take this challenge with their child.
So this whole process, really, Oscar was at the center of everything. There was a whole process where they needed to work out what his priorities and goals were, who the people are that are important in his life and in what ways. And so over a period of maybe 6 months, Oscar, he went in once or twice a month?
It was once a month. I had to see Gene at 68th Street, that campus of Hunter, to work on this legal document.
And so she got to, this was somebody from the support decision-making team, so she got to know Oscar, what his needs were, who the people were in his life, and write up a document of what he wanted. And then we were brought in.
Say if ever my folks are not around, I have all these supporters to help me make all the right decisions if anything ever happens to my folks. The first 2 states that had this law were Delaware and Texas, and then Wisconsin and DC, and then North Carolina, now New York and Massachusetts are getting this new law.
Having CERT's therapist from school on my wife and I's team in the supported decision-making process really affords us, I think, more of a fuller view of what all of his needs are. He can communicate the needs to us very well, but sometimes making those decisions can be tough. When we have someone from his school level, and it is a day treatment facility, so all of his psychiatric staff, all of his counseling staff, everyone is there, which has been a huge benefit for us. but to get the information and the input from that portion of his life, which parents may not see the daily intricacies of, it really gives us a far better rounded view of the ways that we can approach the decisions that need to be made in consultation with the actual medical staff at the time.
It has impacted my life in many ways because although I pick supporters for each of different areas, I think that all of my supporters comes together as like one village whenever I need their support, and they just help me see my dreams and goals come true.